Hi, welcome to Theater from the Ground Up. You know, one of the things about theater that's so interesting is that as an occupation, it seems to capture people at a very young age. But not everyone pursues theater, but certain people go through their life and their path brings them back to theater. And we have a guest today who was a trained actress at a young age, but then her work, her winding path, took her into the area of makeup and hair design. And now, at this stage in her life, that path is coming back to theater. And she's working on a piece, a solo performance piece, and the subject of that piece is actually beauty. So it's a very interesting story. And I'd like you to welcome with me Kathleena Gorga. Hi, Kathleena.
Hi, Gino. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for being here. And, you know, just let's start out with, if you would, just say a little bit about your early connection to the theater.
So yes, as a young person, my aspiration was to be an actress, and I ended up having a semester before college, and I went to beauty school because my mother said, well, you're going to be an actress, maybe you should go to beauty school, you're always doing everybody's hair, you'll have a skill you can fall back on. So I took that into university and cut everybody's hair in the dorm while I was studying at NYU. And I studied with Stella Adler through the department, the School for the Arts at NYU. So I was doing university on some days, and then I was studying actually with Stella Adler and her team of teachers up at the conservatory. And that was pretty exciting, but as a kid, didn't know just how, I mean, she was the legend of the modern theater.
Yes, not an easy person to work with either.
An ego that a lot of rooms couldn't contain.
Yes.
We were actually instructed to, when Miss Adler enters the room, everybody stand and give her a standing ovation. So that got a little tiring every time. But,
right.
But I learned a lot. Then I went off to study acting in London for a year, postgraduate at Webber Douglas, one of the big four there, and came back to New York and was auditioning and did theater. And as a young person, I had issues, you know. I needed something to do that I could put my hands on, and hair and makeup was related to theater, but it gave me gratification, and I just knew that I needed to really be committed if I wanted to take the route of the actor's life. Yeah. So I made a detour.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And could you say a little bit about what your work has consisted of in the realm of hair and makeup? What type of work have you been doing?
So back in New York, I started selling makeup. And I met a woman who said, and at the time I was still doing my own, I was doing stand-up comedy, I was doing singing in cabarets and creating little shows, and this woman who was doing makeup and hair on set said, you know, you do hair and you do makeup. You could be doing this on set, and then you could produce your own shows and have both things in your life. And so I decided to do that, and I got my portfolio together, went off to Europe, and started working in fashion. And that was really the main part of my work in New York, was fashion. I got an agent when I came back with these tear sheets out of magazines. My work was in the European magazines, and I put them in a portfolio. You call those tear sheets. And then that enabled me to get an agent in New York. And I was, you know, in the middle of the fashion world, which consisted of work doing magazines, TV, fashion shows. I was doing a lot of fashion catalogs. And so my work was, it was really intense back then, especially with the catalogs. I'd be up at 4 o'clock making up 3 girls, hair and makeup ready before sunrise, and then out and shooting for the whole day. So it was a lot of work and a lot of fun.
So it was the professional beauty business, is a way of talking about it.
Totally. And being behind the scenes for you know, how looks are created and how things are marketed. The makeup and hair was really a crucial part of it.
And how has it been for you, or how is it now, that, you know, you are creating these images of beauty, which are the things which other people aspire to in large measure. And how does that feel?
Right. So I was in a very interesting position because as a young person, I had really bad self-esteem, and I had eating disorders. And here I was in the fashion world where it's, the epitome of perfection, and at least that's what it looks like. And I saw a lot of things, and some of the things that really imprinted on me was, I remember one time I was on a job, and I was there early, and this young lady came in, and I didn't know she was the model. I thought she might have been the stylist or the photographer's wife or somebody. But she came in, she wasn't really gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And then I learned that she was the model, and I was like, okay, well, we'll see, and I started putting on the makeup. I started doing her foundation, and something magical happens in the makeup room where we connected, and we started having a conversation about life and boyfriends and things. And this was a very beautiful human being. She was a very lovely person. And as I put the makeup on, there was a transformation. And then as she put the outfit on and then stepped in front of the lights, it was, I have goosebumps just thinking about it. She was a completely different person. So the thing that I really learned along the way in fashion was that beauty is not merely external, but there is a radiance, an inner radiance that is really the soul's radiance that makes a huge difference in how someone radiates their beauty. And she was a remarkable woman, and in front of the camera, she had some kind of an inner life that made her captivating. And conversely, I'd worked with women that were, quote unquote, more beautiful, more symmetrical. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a thing that is highly revered in fashion, is the more symmetrical the features, the higher the day rate. Mm-hmm. And there were girls that were, quote unquote, more beautiful on the outside, but had nothing going on the inside, and were kind of boring to watch. The great models are great actors. Not in the way that we think of as theater actors, but they create something inside that then translates to the outside, an intensity or whatever the job calls for. There's something going on the inside. Mm-hmm. So it was really fascinating.
Yeah, and what it makes me think about is that sometimes actors feel that unless they are on a certain level of perfection in their appearance, that they really don't have a chance in the world of acting. And maybe that's not so. Maybe.
Oh my. I mean, talk about beauty and the subject of beauty and what you're speaking of. I have a dear friend who's well known in Marin, actually, David Roach, who has a physical disfiguration.
I know David.
You know David. Mm-hmm. So David has a very significant hemangioma on the left side of his face, and he speaks to the topic of beauty and inner beauty, and he's hilarious on set. And I've been a friend of his for many, many years, more than 20 years, and I don't see David. I don't see the disfiguration. I see David and his beautiful blue eyes. And he has been a very successful actor and has written a book. And so I think that for me, if I were to say to that young actor who's feeling insecure, is the better your relationship with yourself. I've learned that the more we love what feels ugly about ourselves, the things that we judge about ourselves, the more we have the courage to have the willingness to actually be more compassionate and patient with ourselves and loving and accepting. There's a presence that we radiate when we're willing to do that. And I mean, evidence of that is, look at any of the Housewives series. I mean, they've got the perfect makeup, the perfect hair, the perfect cosmetic surgery. They've got everything on the outside nailed down to
yes,
right? To a point of stiffness. But there isn't a lot of beauty going on. There's not a lot of wonderful presence and feelings. There's maybe presence that's shocking, but to me that's really not beauty. That's sensational. And we do confuse beauty and glamour in our culture. You know, glamour can be beautiful, but beauty is something deeper. Beauty feeds our soul.
Yes, you had said when we talked earlier that beauty is an alchemical thing, and that I think people understand that word, that it's a magical kind of chemical thing that occurs.
Absolutely. I do believe that beauty is an alchemical thing. From standing in front of a beautiful sunset or sunrise to the beauty of friendship. I mean, I so appreciate the beauty of nature here. I mean, there's something that happens to us physically, emotionally, spiritually. It has an effect, and our souls need it.
Right.
It really needs it.
And it's really important to be reminded of it, because we are bombarded by these sterile but intense images of beauty, of what beauty is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that can be very disheartening for a lot of people.
It can be, and you know, I'd like to just say it's a business, and it's a business of selling a lot of products. And I've been on sets where the debate of whether a button should be moved over to, you know, so that the shirt looks, you know, I was on a set once, actually before we were on set, I was preparing girls for a shoot, and this 19-year-old girl, I was racing to get the girls ready for sunrise, says, as she's putting her mascara on, you know, she was 19, I'm 19 and I'm too old. They're looking for 14-year-olds now. You know, I'm 19, I'm never gonna be a supermodel, I'm too old. And I was like, at the time, you know, I was 35, I felt like someone slapped me in the face.
Yeah.
And I stopped, I put the blow dryer down and I said, you're too old at 19. Nothing happens before 30 when it comes to your beauty and power as a woman. And we work in a business that's like a vampire. It's always looking for new blood, and as soon as you get old, they're gonna look for someone who looks like you, who's younger. So, you know, youth is really elevated in our culture, being young and holding on to being young. But we know what happens when people overdo it with plastic surgery and try to keep tweaking it and making it perfect. It starts to get disfigured.
Yes.
It starts to...
Disfigured is the perfect word.
Really, it goes right into the opposite. You know, when you try to clutch something, you know, if I try to clutch this flower, it's going to die and it's going to wilt. Whereas for me, you know, love is really the most powerful healing force. So if we can find ways to forgive ourselves for being imperfect, that's our humanity, and love ourselves a little bit more and be gentle with ourselves, it is amazing the alchemical transformation that happens.
That's great. Well, I feel like I really should ask you just for a couple of minutes maybe to talk about celebrities, because I know you often do work with celebrities.
Right.
And I wonder if there are any stories that you want to tell that kind of illustrate the work that you do.
So when I work with celebrities, I get very small. Tom Hanks probably could not tell you what color hair I have. I get very small. I cast, you know, in all the work that I do, I cast a field of nurturing and safety. When you work with celebrities, you really respect that they're getting ready. I'm a preparation expert. I prepare the outside and I hold the space, and I'm very quiet and inward as I'm doing my work. Because that actor is then going to step in front of the camera and be asked questions and have to produce. So he's in his preparation. With regular people, I want to connect with them.
Yes.
I want them to trust me. I want to know about them. But it's more of a dialogue, whereas with celebrities, it's not. And I'll tell you a really funny story. I did Diane Sawyer's hair. My colleague was doing her makeup for an interview with Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook back in 2010. And in that situation, Diane we're in the makeup room. She's talking to her 3 assistants. She's on the phone. and she's kind of strategizing her interview. And I'm doing her hair, trying to like move with her. And Nellie's doing her makeup. I was like, thank God I'm just doing hair today. To do makeup is so much harder in that kind of a situation. And so, you're getting them ready. You have to produce top quality.
Yes.
And you got to move, and you can't ask them to do anything. So it's a lot of pressure. So the theater in this situation was, when we finished with Diane, we had to go do Mark's hair and makeup. So it was really interesting being the fly on the wall, strategizing how to answer this question, that question, and do I really need this makeup? And I said to Mark, well, if you want to look like you're sweating in the interview, you probably would want some powder. You don't want to look like you're nervous, right? So sometimes I have a little fun with celebrities.
Yes. Well, I'm struck by the proximity between you and the subject. There's something that's very powerful about that. And as you say, in that celebrity situation, that you reduce your presence in some way.
Absolutely.
But that you are always inside the normal working relationship that people have.
Well, you're touching someone.
Yes.
You're touching someone's face. It's a very personal thing to who touches your face, your mother, your lover, your doctor. I mean, so my work is, I take it very seriously that I'm doing something to someone that's very personal, and I want them to feel comfortable, and whatever it takes to make that person feel comfortable, and what I believe is very much a quiet presence.
Yes.
Of just letting them know that I'm here if they need something, and do my work as fast and efficiently as possible in the calmest way.
I see. Well, let's take it now to where all of this has brought you, because I know that you are working on material of your own, solo performance material, and let's talk about that for a little bit. Tell us about how all of this work in the realm of hair, makeup, and beauty has brought you to where you are now, which is beginning to do a solo piece.
Yes, well, I have lots of stories to tell, and about 4 years ago, I almost died. I had a very serious infection in my spine, and you're basically interviewing a miracle. There's actually no medical reason for me to be sitting here, let alone not paralyzed. And so I had a long recovery process. I was in the hospital for a few weeks and then came home and for months. And I watched a lot of TED Talks. And actually within that healing process, I was completely disassembled. And in that quiet, I remember hearing a voice say to me, "You are not your body. You are not what you do," because I couldn't work. And I was always pretty identified with who I was and what I did and the power of what I did. And that my essence was love. That was the truth of who I was. And that I listened to that voice and began to, in my healing process, think about the story that I would like to talk about when it comes to the topic of beauty and what my transformation was from eating disorders and really low self-esteem, self-loathing, to working in the fashion world, making, some of the most objectified and beautiful women up and doing their hair, to then working with celebrities and seeing the frailties and the humanity of certain celebrities before I put on their mask of what they then presented to the world. And I want to really inspire people to know that it's great to use hair and makeup to express yourself. It's an art form. It's parts of us that we can express. I think that we turn the volume up. That's what I like to say to my clients. I turn the volume up on, that part of you that wants to express. But that if we're willing to really look at what we deem as ugly in ourselves and bring more patience and compassion to that part of ourselves, there's an alchemical thing that happens that brings more presence and more beauty into your life. And the more we focus on that, the more we start to really become sensitive to seeing the beauty around us and in each other too. Because we're really trained to see what's not beautiful about ourselves.
Yes.
And
So,
then you need these products to make it
right,
okay.
right. So in terms of the actual piece that you're creating, and you mentioned you have a number of stories, could you say a little bit about what are the stories that form the flow of this piece?
So, you know, I talk a little bit about my background. I grew up Italian in New Jersey, so, you know, food was very important.
Yes.
My mother cooked nonstop. So, you know, everybody was on a diet, but everybody wanted to, like, get,
Yes.
you know, eat. Like, there was always a lot of food. And so then moving into the fashion world and certainly the things that I saw, you know, oh God, you know, I just remember so many things flashed through my mind just
Sure.
then, you know, but a girl coming in and, you know, she was totally anorexic. I mean, she had a man-tailored shirt on and I could see every bone in her spine. And this is not beauty. This is serious. This is sad. And, you know, the kind of craziness that I witnessed, but that it was inspiring to take a deeper look. And that's kind of how that story about the young girl that was 19 that thought she was too old, it was the inspiration. It was a turning point, actually, in my life where my business, which I call Conscious Beauty, was birthed. And I started having dialogues with the models about, you know, what's it like for you, you know, when you walk into a room. And I remember Heidi, a very, very famous person now with Project Runway. Heidi and I used to work together like for weeks at a time for a particular catalog. And, you know, one thing you might not know about her is she's a really wonderful painter.
Oh, this is Heidi Klum.
Heidi Klum, yeah. Lovely, lovely. So there's stories about, you know, I remember she told me like her boyfriend at the time, this was before Heidi Klum was Heidi Klum. I don't know how much time I have
No,
left
you're
here.
fine.
But she and another girl were sitting with me in my hotel room, and I was talking to them about, you know, beauty. And I remember Heidi starting to cry and saying, you know, my boyfriend, you know, he's in production in South Beach, and he likes me to dress up when we go out to the restaurant because, you know, he wants to have me on his arm, but he's not paying any attention to me. And now I laugh. I'm thinking to myself, boy, is this guy kicking his ass, you know? So
Exactly.
you know, that's fascinating that someone as beautiful as Heidi Klum could feel really like overlooked and used, really, you know, in such a way, kind of exploited for what this would bring this guy who was in the production business. And then the other model, Mary Catherine, another really sweet woman, said, you know, it was really hard to make friends in high school because everybody thought I was a bitch before I even opened my mouth. So these are interesting stories that kind of demystify and kind of debunk. You know, if I'm thinner, more people will love me, or I'll get a boyfriend, or, you know, I think the essence of the piece that I'm trying to create, and I'm still developing it, is my experience was that the more I loved my parts home to center, the more beautiful I felt, the more willing I was to love myself no matter what. And listen to those critical voices, but then say, no, you know what? I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to train myself. And I believe that beauty is a practice. It's a spiritual practice for me every day of really looking for the beauty and forgiving myself for being human, you know, and not being perfect. It's boring.
Yes. Well, I'm saying yes overall. I'm not saying yes, you're boring.
No.
But so can you say a little bit about what are your in terms of performance, in terms of the piece that you're trying to do? And I think you've spoken about what you hope to give to the audience.
Right.
And what are do you have any logistical plans or timetable?
Yeah, I want this piece to open a dialogue. My vision is, I bring my singing, my acting, my comedy to this piece, and I'd like to have a dialogue after the piece. I'd like to bring it into communities that are marginalized. I'd like to have people thinking about this, this topic, and how they can make shifts, little shifts, tiny shifts within themselves, not big shifts. And the thing that I've learned is when I do makeup, it can be healing. I used to do makeup and teach makeup to women who were recovering from cancer. And, when you see yourself made up, sometimes there's an inner shift. But there's also little inner shifts that I talk about where we can love our parts home, that can create an outer shift. So it's both.
Yes.
So I want people to know that.
Well, that's great. And the other thing that's on my mind in the moments that we have left, there's something about going out into your life and then coming back to performance that could be, you could feel like time was wasted, and yet it feels as if no time was wasted, that it was all towards developing this material.
Well, talk about critical voices. Like, can I do this? Can I really do this? And I want to say that, for me, getting into a class, and I'm taking a class with David Ford over at the Marsh Theater in Berkeley, who is phenomenal. He is helping me develop it.
I've studied with David too.
Yeah, and so I've been in that class for a year developing segments, and I'm going to be performing again in September on the 10th, another segment in Berkeley. Not a plug or anything.
Quite all right.
But having a container where other people are working on their solo performance pieces has been vital, because those voices, why am I doing this? This is crazy. Why should I do this? But what my experience has been is that my training, it's been like I've taken out this big chest out of the attic and I've dusted it off, and actually these techniques, I was very well trained, have just been waiting for me.
That's great. That's great. And I hope that's an inspiration to all of you. I hope you come back to the show next time. Thanks for being with us. I'm Gino Rose, and this is Theater from the Ground Up.